The number one driver of the sports industry is the fan experience. If you can nail fan engagement and link it to all three of those mediums, which is exactly what YouTopia Sports does, then you have growth in sports.
We are so grateful to be supported by these community champions: Sales MD, Team Friday, Realist Lab, Kiana Patterson, Diego Chavez, Jer Boucher, Heather Ryder, Janine Sua, Lily Roca, and Steve Kernan.
Hola, hello, hi, bienvenido, and welcome back. Or maybe your first time with us, welcome to Entrepreneurial Thinkers. As you may or may not know, this is the show where I get the privilege to have weekly conversations with some of the best and brightest, what I call entrepreneurial thinkers across all sectors and segments of society and industry, as we come together to not only learn how they think differently about the industry that they work in, but also just honestly to try to leave the world maybe a little bit better understood or just a little bit better off than we found it. Today, I'm super excited to be joined by two amazing guys coming at us today from two different parts of the world, in the Midwest, in the US here, and then over in Europe. Sebastien Bellin and Diederik Botts, co-founders of YouTopia Sports. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about them before we meet them, because there's a kind of a fun personal connection. So I'm going to take a little liberty. After all, this is my show and I get to write these scripts. So I'm going to take a little liberty with this intro just to kind of connect the dots of how we know each other. But also more importantly, just to kind of lay the foundation for what we're going to talk about. And to me, what we're talking about is something that's been ingrained in my DNA since I was a little kid: sports and sports fandom and the business of sport. As happens when you're born into a life in Chicago, like I was, Chicago, Illinois, for those that don't know, outside the US, you are born into a life of sports fandom, whether you like it or not. And you are either a Chicago Cubs baseball fan or a Chicago White Sox baseball fan, depending literally on just which side of town you live in or the fandom heritage of your parents. But over the last 50 years, I've watched the sports industry and sports fandom change dramatically. And in my humble opinion, not necessarily always for the better or always in the interest of the fan. And so today, these two guys are going to show us the way forward in modern sports fandom and sports engagement for clubs, leagues, media, companies, and maybe even the players. And although I am just meeting Diederik for the first time today, I feel like we might share a lifelong passion for the business of sport. He obviously took what was kind of a childlike passion of mine and he turned it into his profession, and he's turned it into his entrepreneurial career. But I feel like there's some threads there. And the more fascinating part is that Diederik and I would not even be meeting today if it wasn't for, I don't know, maybe about 16 years ago or so, it seems, 15, 16 years ago or so, when my friend Sebastien was looking for a local gym to get up some shots during the summer while visiting his dad here in Southern California. And he wandered into a dusty old high school gym where I was volunteer coaching the local high school boys basketball team at my daughter's high school. And in the years since, I've had both the pleasure and kind of the heartache sometimes of watching Sebastien's life transform after being party to a tragic terrorist attack in Europe and then blossom into this dynamic personality and renowned speaker and entrepreneur that he is now. He's a former pro athlete who spent 15 years on the court before stepping into the world of business, now building companies as he used to compete in sports, driving revenue from zero to global scale, and focusing on what he calls the mindset of high performance. And Diederik, as I've studied him and just gotten to know him, I'm going to learn a whole lot more about him today, hopefully. He's a digital architect of kind of modern sports ecosystems. He blends technology, fan engagement, and data in ways that help us all as fans, as clubs, as brands, as audiences to kind of rethink and connect and create value in this sports life that we're all part of. So two different journeys, one shared obsession, one great personal connection and story. But really this conversation today is about changing the game, and changing the game of fandom. And it's a conversation, honestly, I've been eager to have for months. So guys, I'm super grateful for you both to be here. Thanks for joining us on Entrepreneurial Thinkers.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you for having us.
This and right there is the perfect example of the fun of having multiple guests on the show at the same time. I'm gonna do a lot of traffic hopping today, where I'm gonna be like, hey, Diederik, why don't you take this question? Or hey, Seb, why don't you answer this? Or whichever one of you wants to take the next question, feel free. So we'll get our way through it together that way. But first things first, I'm curious. First question, kind of set the tone. I alluded to it before, right? I didn't say that when you're born in Chicago, you're also born a Chicago Bears NFL fan. You're also born a Chicago Bulls NBA fan, and you're born a Chicago Blackhawks hockey fan, whether you like hockey or not, which was my case, because that's just kind of the Midwestern culture. But, I went to my first Cubs game at Wrigley Field when I was 7 years old. In 1975, my sister took me. My sister was what they called back in the day a groupie, and she loved to chase around the players, and she kept score. She taught me how to score a baseball game on a like a little score sheet that they would hand out for probably like a nickel or something when you walked into Wrigley Field back in the day. And we would sit out in those cheap bleacher seats a couple of blocks from her apartment, and I was in heaven. Like, I literally thought that Wrigley Field, as a 7-year-old in the summer in Chicago, was some version of where you would go when you died. And yet, it seems to me that like everything about sports fandom and the business of sport is dramatically different today than it was as a 7-year-old in 1975. So maybe Diederik, take this first, maybe if you can, your perspective, and then Seb, if you want to add in, how is it different? Or is that just my nostalgic mindset? And in truth, it's not different at all.
I think it's very different. I wasn't born in the U.S., so the huge franchises don't exist over here. It's your local club, let's say, with your 15,000 fans in the stands. Well, I think it's very different. I think I'm not as young anymore either. I'm getting 45, so I think the younger generations are really experiencing completely different than we were. For me, back in the day, I played soccer before I even knew about basketball. In Belgium, soccer is the first sport, of course. And we went to a game maybe once every 3-5 years to a professional game. So it just wasn't part of the culture at our place, let's say, to go do these things. But when you were there, it was huge. It was so emotional, and it really stuck with me. And especially later on when we played basketball, and then the local team. Yeah, I lived in a small town. The basketball was pretty much the only thing that was going on in the town. So it was really a community building thing. And now I think it's very much different. It's kids on their phone. I don't see that many young kids in the stadiums anymore. I go to my local professional soccer club, every other week, let's say, and I feel like I'm one of the younger people over there.
Okay.
So that's really disturbing, and I think it's rapidly changing, and I think it's going to be a huge challenge for sports franchises globally. To how do we make sure that the younger generations have those same emotions like we did back in the day? I'm 70 years old, but back in the day when it was, it was an experience. It was, and I think maybe now so much is available for the younger generations that it just get blown away with too much content. Just to give you an idea, I'm an NFL fan, and back in the 90s, that wasn't an easy thing in Belgium.
In Europe, to be an NFL fan, like to be able to find the games, watch the games,
I need to listen to AM radio, and I found don't know if it was a legal Swiss company who would send me a VHS tape every week of a game through the mail. So I watched the game 3 weeks after the actual game.
Holy cow.
And now there's so much available, and sometimes I think they're just spoiled with the amount of information that's available that it doesn't feel like an experience or something special anymore going to those games.
Seb, I'm curious, because you grew up kind of straddling both worlds, right? You've had experiences. You went to college in the U.S. You had that exposure. You played at a U.S. university. college sports is a bigger deal, but you grew up in Europe similarly. Like, how do you see this kind of this change from, and again, I realize I'm setting my own framework here, right? Like, but over these last 50 years.
I want to go back to what Diederik just said, because I think in today's generation, I'm lucky to build a company with someone who had to, go through the pains of acquiring a tape 3 weeks later, find a Swiss company that could ship them. I mean, when you think about that today, how easy it is to access. Well, that's really what I call passion. It's an example of passion, right? And I think that's where, it all starts, is how do you build passion in young kids? And one of the things that to answer your question, sports here in the States, it's part of the educational system. So
Right.
it's considered part of school. And just like other activities, but there's really, some of these high schools and here, for example, in Michigan, some of these high schools, the gyms they play in, some pro teams in Belgium would love to have a gym like that, right? So there's
Right.
a real investment right from the beginning towards sports, not as being a pastime, but as being, hey, you got to go through this if you really want to experience the full educational process. So it creates a foundation in young people that then is carried over into, the next steps in their sports experience.
Yeah. Diederik, I was going to tell you, just so you don't feel too alone, and I'm older than you. I've got like 12, 13 years on you. So I was slightly even less technologically connected, right? Because there was less available to distract us. But there was a lot of me being told I was supposed to go to bed at the certain bedtime, right? And lights out. And then I would be in bed and I would sneak my little AM radio and whatever game. And it was usually like some baseball game from the West Coast, like from some other part of the country, right? And I would just lay in bed with like one earphone in my ear, listening to like a random San Diego Padres baseball game or something growing up in Chicago, right? Which was like a sin. But I can cut, not the dramatic level of like getting someone to ship me a tape. That's serious commitment. Considering that like I alternatively could just watch a Bears game on Sunday afternoon with my family with, takeout food. And that was kind of our Sunday after church thing. So you're definitely a passionate fan. All right. So I'm just jumping into the modern era, getting away from my own nostalgia, for a bit. The first question I wanted to kind of just, honestly, I was writing the script and I thought of this question for myself. And then I was like, oh, I wonder what these guys thought or like what these guys experienced in that moment. So I was thinking back to the lockdown of the pandemic of 2020. And I was especially thinking about like the NBA in bubble season, that season when, and by the way, ironically, I live here in Los Angeles. I'm not a Lakers fan. So it's always like hearsay anytime I say that they didn't really win a title that year. They won the bubble title, right? But I found myself watching it as a fan, wondering like, is sports as we know it, like about to just leap forward into this like made for TV product, right? Where it's produced and played in almost like these movie-like sets versus the vibrant stadiums of either 50 or 15,000, people that we grew up with in our towns. Like, I seriously wondered, like, and it speaks to the bigger question. Like, I wondered that in that moment because of what we had already been seeing in like the predominance of television and media rights and the predominance of media distribution for sports as opposed to like the local fan. And so I was curious, like when you guys were experiencing the sports that we were going through in the pandemic, did you see that? Like, did you see that as like a harbinger of like an acceleration of the move away from the local fan base, or was that just me naively looking at it wrongly? Maybe Seb, maybe you could take this one first.
Yeah, no, I never saw one erasing the other. I think the issue is not, are we moving towards this? The issue is how can both coexist, and it's always about coexisting, finding the right balance between the live experience, the viewing experience, and more so today, the digital experience, and how all those three converge to the fan experience. And I think that's the future business model that we are building, that we envisioned, is how to connect all those three. So if I go to a live event, it's got to be very different than sitting down in front of my TV or on my phone and watching the content. It's got to feel different. And right now, I think we're in a very exciting times where, big players, whether it's leagues, teams, or media rights holders, are trying to figure that out. If I want to watch, if I'm an NBA fan, well, it's on 4 platforms. It's on NBA League Pass, it's on Peacock, it's on Prime, and it's on ESPN. If I want to go to a game, okay, well, I got to pay for parking, I got to pay for tickets, I got to pay for this, I got to pay for that. So it's where is this revenue coming from, and how far can we milk the fan until they say my experience is just not worth it anymore, and they stick to just one.
Diederik, are we getting to that point? Are we getting to close to the milk the fan too much point?
Well, I think in the US, you're definitely getting pretty close.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to your original question. I never thought the viewing experience is important, but I mean, especially for, let's say, the global fans that are not local, it's crucial to be able to follow your team and and whatever you want to see. But I want to go back to what Seb said. It's passion, right? You want to support your team. You want to be there. The experience over there is completely different than on TV. Seb and I were at the Golden Knights NHL game a week ago or something. Well, that was definitely some experience. It really blew my mind. I've been to a lot of games, NHL, whatever, but yeah, the experience over there, I'm not going to say it was worth the money that we normally pay,
right?
But it's definitely completely different than watching it in front of TV. It's and that, I think, gets people excited, all ages excited, and that's the difference. And then that's what we want to try, is get people there so that they experience it, and then they understand what the difference is between sitting on your couch and sitting at the game, seeing the experience, seeing everything, what's going on over there, talking to other fans, freezing like other fans. But it was huge for me. It was a completely different experience than I've ever experienced before.
There has to be a differentiator between all three.
Right.
And we are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Chisos Capital. Everyone knows that raising capital is hard. And frankly, finding the next pool of entrepreneurs to get access to as limited investors is sometimes impossible too. Do you have a big idea, a dream you're building, but you're struggling to find early funding? Well, Chisos is changing the game for founders, creators, athletes, and investors. Whether you're launching a startup, growing your creative brand, or training for the big leagues, Chisos backs you. Chisos uniquely invests up to $100,000 in people, not just products, whether they be entrepreneurs, creators, or even athletes. With their unique CISA model, convertible income share agreements, founders get flexible funding without giving up equity or ownership, and investors get attractive returns and great upside with less risk. Chisos works for both investors and the people bringing our world to life. If you're seeking access to a truly diverse pool of deals, or you're someone who feels overlooked by the VC game, Chisos is ready to back you. So apply now at chisos.io.
So there has to be a differentiator, you were saying.
There has to be a clear differentiator between the value propositions of a live event, of viewing, and a digital highlights, gamification kind. Right now, they're trying to figure out what's what. And they're confusing the fan completely because there's no clear value proposition. If I want to pay cash, well, I feel like they're taking advantage of me because on some platforms, I'm paying cash to watch it by my subscription pay-per-view, but I'm also getting ads. You know, I'm going to a live event. Yeah, it's an experience, like Diederik said, but the ticket prices, I mean, the nosebleeds at playoff games are like $200, you know?
Yeah, I mean, let's not even get started on like the craziness that is the World Cup in the
Yeah, but
US in the US right now, right? I mean, like that is taking it to this whole level of, and that's why I ask, like, are we here, at least in this market, right? Are we maybe pushing the boundaries of milking the fan too much, and then open the industry to like a backlash? But that's interesting, Seb, too, because you're saying, like, maybe we are, the industry is, but also maybe they are because they're just deep in the exploratory stage of trying to figure out, and then just not maybe doing a great job of communicating that to the average fan.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, we were at a conference, and like Diederik said, we were at the Peak Conference in Las Vegas last week. And I think it's been so good, you know, like sports has been so good that there's been, when things are really positive, you don't really learn, you know, there's no real, it's everything's good. You know, the fans are happy, the viewership, like everything's great. It's when things start getting down that if you hadn't have like prevention, you know, preparation, like a pro athlete prepares, right? Everybody sees the game. They don't see what goes in before. And we're seeing a lot of people, we're talking to a lot really big teams as well that are like, oh man, we're in trouble. We're in trouble because the younger generation of fans, you know, they consume completely different. If you look at the NFL, 49% of the NFL fans are 55 or older.
Yeah, that's nice for right now, but it's not good for like the next 25, 30 years.
100%. And people don't realize that if you want to sustain growth, well, you might have to sacrifice a little bit of your current strategies and revenue in order to make way for new revenue, new types of fan engagement down the road.
Yeah.
And I don't think
But
I don't think that many teams realize that.
You just made the case for Bad Bunny at the Super Bowl, right? Like that. I mean, that's a recognition, astute recognition by the NFL, right? That says like, we got to start looking, we got to start broadening this out, right? We have to start doing this differently. Diederik, I'm curious, you guys use this phrase in some of your materials, sports belongs to the fans or it ceases to exist. Right. So help us. Maybe this is where we can like start to inject Utopia into this conversation a bit. Right. So start to help us. How does the modern franchise bridge these three different silos, so to speak, where we keep the sports fan at the core?
Did you like the NBA bubble finals to watch?
So here's the funny thing, right? It's like from a viewer standpoint, like I was cool with it. Right? I was because I was viewing it almost again, like in that mindset that I told you in the opening question, I was kind of like, okay, is this where we're going? If it is, maybe I should adjust my habits, blah, 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 be open-minded to it. Was it different? 100%. Right. But then again, I've watched like Unrivaled for the women's league. Right. And they play in essentially like a tiny little bubble, but they have like 700 fans there. So at least there's a little bit of human juice.
Well, maybe you should direct it to Sep. Would you like to play for an empty stadium in front of an empty seats? No, because the fans drive the athletes. The fans make sure that the athletes go to another level. It's without the fans, you wouldn't have a nice stadium to fill, but you wouldn't have the viewership online either, because if you're not a fan, you're not watching the game. Without viewership online, there's not going to be the subscriptions paid for, so the media rights is going to collapse even further. So without the fan, there is no sport, because that's the person who is spending either money at a sponsoring brand, that's why they sponsor, or they're spending money, merchandise, tickets, and whatever. So without the fan, there is nothing. And I think, back to your last question, I think in the US, it's starting to look like a sports is for the rich, the VIPs and whatever.
Yeah, right.
And that's definitely going to be a problem. Because
but also,
sometimes, I'm not going to say all the time, but sometimes they might even lack the passion like other fans
right?
do.
No, 100%. Oh, I mean, I'll say it by word, so you don't have to say it since you're in the industry. Like they do, like the metaphorical they, right? The corporate person, the person who got the tickets because their company has 26 tickets in the loge section or something. Like it's a different connection than it was. And again, I'm just using myself as like this harbinger, like than the 7-year-old me sitting in the bleachers for the Cubs. Like I'm a Cubs fan to this day because of those experiences, right? Had those experiences been blocked out for me, unavailable, like maybe they are to lots of 7-year-olds today, then I don't become the Cubs fan that is the Cubs fan for 50 years. And I don't cry in some random bar in San Francisco in like my late 40s in 2016 when the Cubs finally win the World Series, right? Like because of that. But hey, to your point, Diederik, like let's not just because you guys have such a global perspective and YouTopia seemingly can serve a global client base of clubs. Like, I'm a Liverpool football fan. I don't know how I adopted Liverpool like 15 years ago, but I did before they got really, really good during the Klopp era, which was great timing on my part. But like we talk about, right, the Anfield effect, right? Or Champions League nights at Anfield and how that's a special, like, and we just had a terrible season that we're ending this right now, this current campaign. And frankly, it would have been worse had it not been for the Anfield fan connection and culture and vibe. Is it not just the US versus everywhere else? Is it just these like elite clubs or elite franchises in the top sports, no matter where they are?
Of course, for top competition, top clubs, you always pay more, right? It's value for money a little bit, right? And I've been to Anfield. It's definitely the worst away stand I've ever been to, honestly, but still worth the money to go because it's amazing experience with all the fans singing out loud. But yeah, we also see a little bit that some European clubs are being bought by American investment groups and trying to leverage the same things that are working in the US over in Europe. But I can already tell you they're not going to work over here. People over here, we have rich countries over here and in Europe, but people don't have necessarily the disposable income to spend those amounts on 30 games a year. Right. Because over here, most fans want to go every game. They want to be there for every home game.
I think that's the key right there. What he's saying, to go back to what you said about the bubble and the comments about not a lot of fans, you got to remember that high performers, professional athletes, the number one juice is competition, right? They want to compete. So I agree that fans are important, but what are they playing for is even more important.
Sure.
And I think one of the biggest things is this constant, like, spreading thin of the amount of games per season.
Okay, I mean, that's a whole other topic. That could be like a whole other podcast. That's hugely important. Please talk more about that.
So I think that's intertwined. You look at the investments that were made into these new stadiums, these mega things, these mega stadiums, right? Like the city of London. Well, is there, sure, there's the revenue models now for sports teams is concerts, it's events, and it's all that. But how many concerts can you have? How many huge mega stadiums can you have in a city? Right. So the margins, well, you have to have all these events, but it's really expensive. I think, the future is smaller stadiums and to have less games with more meaningful competitions. If I see the Chicago Bears play the New Orleans Jazz 6 times a year, it's ridiculous. Like that's taking the fan for granted. Right? Now, the only way that works is if those games, you give access to fans who normally wouldn't want to be. So make those games, for example, $20 tickets.
Right.
Attract new fans so that they can experience an NBA game in those games that really, hey, they know that, the bench players are going to play a little bit more and all that. Like, let them experience. That's what YouTopia is. YouTopia is a digital stadium that allows fans to interact with the brands that back their teams. And by interacting, we prove with data points interaction, the fans are rewarded and can trade those U-coins for ticketing and merchandising in the real stadium.
Okay.
Right?
So it's like, these are my words, so correct me and guide me as we get more refined here. So there's like a fan loyalty, customer kind of purpose to it, but then there's also like a digitization of some of the content or the sports, so to speak. Okay.
So, for example, very concretely, we have some really big pro soccer teams already as clients, right? So there are games throughout the season where they know in their 8,000 person stadium, they might only sell 6,000 tickets. They know that, right? It's one of those games against a bottom team. No one wants to go. It's on a bet. So they put 100 tickets into YouTopia. So now the whole community will play games in our app. They download the app. They choose the digital stadium of their favorite team, and they start playing games. Every game is a proof point, a data point that they activated that brand, either through messaging, through branding, from drive to e-commerce. Like, we can prove all those things. And the fan is rewarded with those U-coins. Yeah. And then they can trade in those U-coins for the tickets that the club is not going to sell. It's lost inventory.
Right.
You see?
And then, as we would say in the simple language, like more butts in seats.
Absolutely. And
which then enhances that environment as far as that silo, because now the fan experience is up in the stadium for all the participants.
And more importantly, you attract fans that normally wouldn't have come. Right? That's the mission of YouTopia. It's to make sports accessible to anyone. And if sports teams and the big sport, we had some really big discussions with some top executives from the NFL, from really big leagues. They're starting to realize that we have got to invest. The word investment is coming back. It's not only about revenue generation. It's about investment into new ways to attract this younger population, to attract these people that are being priced out or left out of the sports ecosystem.
I love how, sorry to interrupt. I love the context. I'm going to keep referencing it like this. There are these three distinct complementary silos, so to speak, right? There are these three parts of the experience that the club or the league or the media partner has an opportunity or has the responsibility to try and maximize. And instead of, and Seb, you said it right out of the gate, like instead of thinking of it as like one replaces the other, right? Like, oh, all the kids, all the Gen Z fans or Gen Alpha fans are only going to be digital. Like, no, but like they probably would want to go to the stadium and experience that feeling that Diederik, you felt when you went to the Knights NHL game. Like, they might just not want to be season ticket holders, but they might want to experience it a couple times a year. That's fascinating.
Well, I love in all my businesses or my approaches, I love Venn diagrams. Right?
So I feel like we're heading towards one right now.
Well, Venn diagrams it's very much, like you can talk to a lot of leading investors or whatever. It's not finding one. It's finding where the merging of several different, whether it's industries or concepts. And so a Venn diagram with, let's say, the live experience. So stadiums, viewing, TV, and digital. So how do those three come together? What's the one thing that brings all those together? It's how does the fan experience that? Fan experience. To me, the number one driver of the sports industry is the fan experience. What does the fan experience when they are at a live event, when they are viewing it on TV or a digital product, highlights, interaction, whatever it is, gamification. If you can nail fan engagement and link it to all three of those mediums, which is exactly what YouTopia Sports does, then you have growth in sports.
Yeah.
And I remember being one of the key articles that changed completely how I viewed sports was I can't remember, the ex-commissioner of the MLB. They did a survey of the first 1,000 fans that left all the ballparks in the United States on one night. So all the games that were in the United States, the MLB did a survey of an exit survey of the fans, the first 1,000 fans coming out.
Okay.
65% of fans didn't know the score.
Wow.
Okay. And when I read that article, when I read that survey, I was the GM of a team, one of the major teams of Belgium, pro teams. And I went to my owner and I said, we're doing this wrong. All right, the biggest fixed costs, operational costs for a basketball team or for any pro team is salaries. Right? I mean, it's huge.
Yep.
I tried to convince, didn't work, but I tried to convince, and I'm certain that's the future. Smaller stadiums, huge fan experience. You don't want a crappy team, but you also don't want to be to win. The championship. You just want to be a good, strong team.
Yeah,
that
those the Brightons and Brentfords of the world in the Premier League. That lifelong mid-table, like they've figured out how to compete without getting relegated, but they're never really get a challenge for the top four. But they have loyal fan bases and super engagement and nice businesses.
Yeah, and that's the future of sports. That's the future of sports because fans feel they are part of the journey. You don't have to milk them for $400 tickets because you need to pay these superstars.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that. How about partnering with a local food and where they have, I don't know, where they come to the game, they have a sandwich, they have a beer, they have whatever it is, and they enjoy, they feel part of it. You don't need to spend a lot of money on that. But what drives the business of sports is this need to have these humongous revenues because, that's the only way to feed systems for these clubs competing, for championships. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, no, 100%. Hey, Diederik, I noticed in my prep for the show, you guys did a relationship, partnership of some sort. You can tell us more about it with, I think if it's pronounced correctly, DAZN, that DAZN, like a broadcast media company in Belgium. Like, how is that a different relationship than what we were just talking about, right? Kind of what we were just talking about felt more like, okay, this is how YouTopia fits with and transforms the club business, right? The business of the franchise. How does YouTopia come along in the Venn diagram of the media company relationship to fans?
Well, DAZN is not just a company in Belgium; it's a huge global company, billions of dollars. So for us, it's a huge client. How is it different? Well, they have pretty much all the rights to all the content, right? If you have a team, you're a rights holder to a specific, your team, your players, or whatever. A media company like DAZN or ESPN or whatever, they have access to everything. They own so much that you're also able to deliver a lot to the fans, content-wise, media-wise, and whatever. And I think I've been in sports now, or passionate about sports quite a while, and I think those media companies are heavily misunderstood by the fans.
Okay, how so?
Fans are very critical on these media companies, on their milking us as a fan and the viewership and whatever, and we need to pay X amount. But it's the sport teams that are expecting, or the leagues that are expecting those huge amounts of money for their players, for their teams, for their revenue sharing model and whatever, that those media companies don't have any other choice than to battle against each other to pay probably more than is needed.
Sure.
And then, of course, well, they're not non-profits. They need to make money as well. So I think we need to make sure that those media companies, together with the fans, they keep the sport alive. Without them, there's no visibility globally, but there's also no media money. And for a lot of sports, media money is a big chunk of their revenue. For the smaller sports in Europe, not that much, where brands and sponsorship are more important. That's why we also have the solution.
Yeah.
But yeah, those media companies are critical in every aspect of well, being able to grow sports to the levels that they are now.
So in some ways, like I'll be the fan in this example, right? So in some ways, while we can lament and complain about now I have to have a Peacock subscription and now I have to have an Amazon, like, because the league, as Seb said about the NBA, like the league is on so many different platforms. If I want to watch my team all the time, I can feel like that, but I also should, if the media companies are savvy and smart about how they engage with me or what unique value they provide me that's different, right? Then I could develop an affinity for that media company and kind of maybe like an appreciation for, hey, okay, well, like I get it. Like I'm not super stoked about paying for that extra subscription, but like I get it because that is what helps my team in this league.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Shore Capital. In today's venture capital world, it's not just about cash. It's about relationships. Capital is harder to find. Limited investors have fewer managers that they can trust. And the industry is just filled with far too much hype. Shore Capital is an early stage venture fund investing in the world's most ruthlessly iterative founders, helping its limited partners to find founders who are solving the world's most dynamic problems. Teams that excel in mastering the idea maze. Teams moving with a rapid, iterative velocity and demonstrating radical resourcefulness. Shore Capital doesn't just write checks, though. They become fractional co-founders when needed, offering strategic support, high-leverage relationship development, and a deep commitment to the long-term success of their portfolio companies. If you are a ruthlessly iterative founder with a bold vision or a limited investor seeking sustained access to the brightest big thinkers of our time, Shore Capital wants to meet you. So visit shorecapital.notion.site to learn more.
In this league stay competitive. And so in the meantime, like, hey, the ESPN or DAZN or somebody at Fox is giving me, Sky Sports is giving me something unique experientially that when I'm enjoying that match or that game, like I'm attached to them as well. So, okay, like that's kind of where that would be the ideal. And what you're saying is YouTopia can help DAZN deliver that.
Well,
Absolutely.
More specifically, very specifically, the model these media. So Diederik hits the nail on the head. Okay, DAZN bought the media rights. I mean, it's public knowledge to Belgian pro soccer, the biggest sport in Belgium, for 84 million euros a year. Okay, there's a huge gap between the reality of the market and what these rights are really worth.
Sure.
However, DAZN is the bad guy that we're trying to help. Why? Because do you think the teams will accept any less than 84 million? They're already coming down from 100 plus million, right? So without that money, teams are dead. You look at Chelsea, that's a 300 million euro operating loss in 1 year.
Yeah, I was waiting to see if anybody was going to bring up Chelsea as the holy grail of the way not to do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's thousands of there's hundreds of clubs at the top level. Very rare without a rich owner or backers or investors. They don't make money. I mean, they don't exist, right?
Yep.
Diederik is right that the media rights are the last holy grail of revenue. Okay, because without them, you also don't have any sponsorship activations. So what we offer is a solution to the revenue model. There's right now the only solution is premium. So I pay these media rights holder to access the
Right.
content, right? The freemium, free to air, right? I put it on an OTT platform, on whatever it is, on social media. Well, that gives zero data to my brands. Brands want data. We
And a
invented
lot
what's
less
called,
experience for the fan.
we invented what's called the admium. So it's
Okay.
not premium, it's not freemium, it's ads. Activate the brands of the team in a digital stadium that we will create for you in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
Exchange your Ucoins that you won by activating the brands for access to the content. Whether
Premium
it's
content.
live,
Yep.
whether it's
Yeah.
live or in the app. Okay. So
Right.
in fact, we create 100% cashless ecosystem that is again parallel to the freemium and to the premium. It's always the intersection of those three, let's say, Venn circles, that
Yeah.
all comes to how the fan consumes sports.
You can keep talking about your Venn diagrams. It's okay. Hey, I got to say, this is a little slightly off flow here, but I just want to inject this because experientially it's been fascinating and it just keeps rattling around in my head as I'm listening to you guys. So I said this in one of the questions you guys saw in advance. Like, I've become a big NWSL fan, the women's professional soccer league here. We have a franchise here, Angel City, which is like having a pretty good season on the pitch finally, but like basically is known as like a brand behemoth in women's soccer in this current reinvention of women's soccer in the US in the last 5-7 years. And it's funny because I bring them up just thinking so much of what I'm hearing you guys talk about as YouTopia is putting itself in the middle of this Venn diagram to help kind of the big established leagues and clubs that we're talking about. The NWSL is still at a point where it has essentially built its new, because it existed like 15 years ago, but then it went away and now it's back, right? Like this new iteration of the NWSL going forward, say 2020 forward, is really like a lot of still kind of like small club vibes built on community, built on like deep connection. Angel City did a masterful job of this, if I do say so myself, like connecting to the culture of the city and the local fans and fan activations and community work where they're out in the community. They've done some really innovative things around like they were the first club in the NWSL to say, we're going to take 10% of our sponsor revenues, right, that come in, and we're going to dedicate that to the community and various program support, et cetera. They do a goal matching program where it's like, a certain amount of money per goal scored goes to like food bank programs in the cities. And yet they're also the team that's on the headline of, New York Times articles about the highest valued team in the NWSL. And, they just had the Bob Iger and his wife, Willow Bay, took over primary ownership of the club last summer. And, that was a huge deal. And so I suspect that it feels like there's a huge opportunity in NWSL for YouTopia and vice versa for the NWSL to leverage, because you guys are kind of like mapping the same Venn diagrams. But I also feel like, to Seb's point, it's preemptory, because I also feel like the NWSL is inevitably hurtling towards the same pro sports model in the US, where it's going to chase like 5 really huge clubs and then a bunch of mediocre clubs, and it's going to become a VIP experience in the next 5 years if we're not careful.
Well, and plus I would add, I have 2 daughters. I have 2 daughters who are both athletes as well. So first thing, the NWSL is the exact league that we go after.
It seems so obvious to me.
So it's secondary or tier leagues that have a lot of ticket inventory and that have a lot of attachment to the community. We build communities. We take online communities and we bring them into the stadium by activating brands.
Yeah.
Second of all, we're at a crucial point for women's sports.
Huge.
Because there is a trend in women's sports. There is a lot of attention on women's sports. But like I tell my daughters, it's now that we have to really monetize that. It's now that we have to really do, because there's been these waves, right? And there's still a lot of work to be done in women's sports, because if we don't actually fill stadiums, if we don't actually create these communities around women's sports, brands will leave. They
Right.
will support, fans will support, but there needs to be something there where we can show and measure activation, fan engagement. And so that's why Diederik and I talk about this all the time, whether it's Love B, whether it's NWSL.
Love B is another one. Great example.
That is the leagues we will be launching with, we will be reaching out to in the coming weeks and months.
That's
as we
awesome.
prepare
That's great to hear. As a fellow girl dad, and also just I've become, as male prototypical 57-year-old sports fan as I could possibly be, like after going to my first NWSL match, which was an Angel City match, like I'm intoxicated with just the different vibe, because in some ways I've said this to friends, the positivity, the vibe, the collegial nature of it, the familial vibe in a stadium that is a women's sports stadium. I've now gone to a couple WNBA matches as well. Like, it reminds me of how it felt when you went to a Cubs game when I was a kid, right? And it's, again, not to be nostalgic but just to think about it more like, no offense, but like, I don't know that I would take my grandson to an NFL game in the future here in LA, because like there's probably a pretty good chance that there's going to be a beer-fueled brawl or some kind of a violent attack of some fan base sitting next to us. Whereas when you go to the NWSL or the WNBA matches, like the vibe, the fan experiential vibe in the stadium is just so dramatically different. And I would imagine, Diederik, that's a huge opportunity for you guys.
Definitely. And then what do you think creates the most long-term fans or the most passionate fans? It's the ones that you interact with, where you have a community feeling, where you feel part of the team, and not just where people go for one game, put it on social media, and then never come back. That's where the future is. And then I think women's sports have a huge opportunity in the future. Because, like Seb said, brands are very much interested in women as customers as well, of course. And I think it's important for young girls to also have people to look up to and say, I can make it as a girl in sports as well. And I think over here at the moment in Belgium, we have the perfect example with the Belgian national basketball team. I think for the men, there's like 5,000 people at the game, and the women sell out 20,000 people arena.
Fascinating.
So
love that.
They're two-time European champions and so on. So results also matter.
Of course.
But it brings out people, and not just girl dads. Let's say, I have two boys. Right. I also watch them play. So it's huge opportunity, I think, for franchises, but especially for brands to really. Well,
and one like harkening back to something Seb said, like right out of the gate, right? It's almost, this is just me. I'm going to sound like a commercial for YouTopia now because I'm a fan of what you guys are doing, but like, it's either you're going to want to leverage a relationship with YouTopia at some point in the future when you have to, because you waited too long to figure out ways to create these complementary silos, or you could leverage a relationship with and invest in a relationship with YouTopia now when you're prospectively building towards better engagement. So maybe you avoid some of those franchise league born pitfalls.
Yeah, and I think there's a main difference there. I think for some clubs, YouTopia will be new revenue drivers. That they say, like, you're at the start there and you see opportunities, you fan engagement and so ever. But with other clubs, I think YouTopia is going to be a revenue saver, that they keep the current brands because they're not able to deliver data or whatever to their current sponsors and brands, that they need to figure out something to even keep them for next year. So it's not going to create extra revenue. It's just going to make sure that they keep the current revenue. And that's what you said. I think there's two ways to go. Some might be, well, on the late side. And I think especially when on the early side, there's huge possibilities.
Yeah. I want to sorry, go, Seb, real quick. Please say what you're going to say.
And it's also a media platform. It's also a media platform for teams. You see, what is the one pain for a lot of these smaller leagues? How do they get on an ESPN? How do they get on a Prime? The trend is more and more for these teams to take back their media rights. It's a long-term vision. It's not as quick as if you maybe go on ESPN, but you're going to own your data of your fan base, and you're going to be able to control the global, because when you have an app and you have a media platform, anyone from anywhere around the world can trade in their Ucoins to then watch the game, right? Yeah. These big brands that support Nike, Coke, all those, they don't care where their fans come from. They don't care where their clients come from. They just want clients. Right? Diederik says that all the time. Look, a global brand doesn't care if my customer is in Michigan watching an NWSL game or whether it's in Belgium, watching a Belgian player on a team. They don't care.
Right.
They just want the proof that I was activated by this fan, by this data point. And so it's a real,
No, sorry. I was just going to say, the alternative seems like, tell me I'm wrong, or alternatively, this seems like the old techie in me is now thinking this is a buy it versus build it type of scenario for the club or for the league, right? It's it seems like if they're not going the path of working with a YouTopia, whether it is YouTopia or someone like YouTopia that's out there, it seems like the alternative would be that they're trying to probably build these types of solutions themselves.
Yeah, I don't think so. Because I've talked to a lot of clubs and own clubs and whatever. 99.5% of the budget, if it's not making them better in sports,
they don't care.
It's going to be a huge effort. And I've had my own IT company, and I've tried to work with sport teams, and they're happy to work with you, but they'll pay you in season tickets or whatever. It's it's if it doesn't bring added value to getting better on the field, it's very difficult for them to achieve something.
Yeah.
So I don't see build happening that fast in a lot of clubs.
Okay. I'm all right. So I'm going to pepper you guys with, and either one of you can take these. These are just some businessy, nerdy questions. So now we understand kind of what it does and how it fits into the various customer profiles and stuff. Now let's just talk a little bit about the business. So here's a handful. Take them any way you want, Seb or Diederik. How does YouTopia make money, right? How does YouTopia measure its own growth? And then kind of what do you think YouTopia will look like, or what do you want YouTopia to look like, in 5 years, 7 years, for you guys to say wow, we're succeeding in our mission. And also, by the way, I realize you guys are a private company, so you don't have to give out secrets. I'm not trying to break news here. I'm just trying to get some context.
No secrets. Fuck.
You send me an NDA after we're done. We'll send an NDA to the entire audience.
So how do we make money? It's pretty simple. It's just a rev share. So for our app, it's free for the fan. It's free for the rights holder, so the club or every media company or whatever. It's the brands that pay for proof of activation, for customer loyalty and customer acquisition. Those funds, we just do a rev share with the club based on who brings the sponsoring brand.
We are so grateful to be supported by sponsors like our friends at Haney and Company. We all know that in today's complex financial landscape, having a trusted advisor can make all the difference. Since 1960, Haney & Company has been providing comprehensive accounting services to a diverse range of clients, from small businesses to large corporations. With nearly 400 professionals across 13 locations, they offer services in tax, audit, business consulting, and client advisory. In fact, their commitment to excellence has earned them recognition from Accounting Today and Forbes magazines. At Haney & Company, though, it's not just about balancing books. It's about building lasting relationships based on trust and mutual growth. So visit HaneyCPAs.com. That's HaneyCPAs.com to learn how they can support your business's financial journey. But it might have been overall, but it actually will pick up. So it's a rev share model, and then you were talking about the brand.
Yeah, so depending on who brings the brand to the virtual stadium, let's say, if it's already a sponsor of the current team, of course the rev share is more in favor of the team. If we bring a brand, then it's free money for the club. So then the rev share is more in our favor.
Awesome. And how are we going to judge success? How are you two going to sit back in your rocking chairs 5, 7, 10 years from now and say like, hey, wow, Utopia is what we thought it could be?
Seb, that's for you. You're the visionary. No. No, I think we, we're at this, we launched 4 months ago, and we already have a signed partnership with what I see as not the exit, but the ideal partner. Why? Because we always envisioned having either, when you start, you got to know a little bit where you're going, and the media giants like DAZN, like the Peacocks, like the Paramounts, well, they're looking for solutions that come and complement their premium revenue stream, right?
Yeah.
Which we offer. We also could do a licensing deal with huge teams that already have their apps, that already have, we could integrate our technology, and we could also create our own Utopia, which is my dream, what I create, a smaller media rights company that works with these smaller leagues like Love B.
Okay.
So you can have, again, 3 different types of revenue and value propositions that come together always by giving fans an alternative to what it's not, to me, innovation is not saying this is bad, this is good. It's how do you complement and build that bridge into the future?
100%. No, I love that. And that's especially relevant today, right? In where a lot of, again, from the fans' point of view, maybe even mainstream media coverage point of view, not the companies, but the coverage is a lot of this, like it's either us or them, right? It's the VIP personalized experience, and the rich people are getting to go to the games and we get stuff paying for it on TV. Like it's a lot of this confrontational, which is just in our culture in general, right? But it's a lot of this. And I love the way that you guys have framed it. The Venn diagram of sports, right? Is like, wait a minute, no, there's opportunities for everybody to enjoy and prosper and connect to the experience. Just you're in different silos at different points as a fan.
Yeah, Rob, I don't know if you realize, did you see the NFL games on Netflix on Christmas Day?
Yeah, I happened to watch. Yes.
Yeah. So you're talking about this kind of model that the NFL is pitching the younger generations. What are they telling? Hey, you owe us $25 a month for access to our platform, Netflix. And on top of that, every 5 minutes, we're going to throw 2-minute ads at you. So they're mixing the premium and the freemium model.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Fans are going to, that next generation, you are losing them 100%. Because one thing the younger generation wants is fairness, is more fairness. It's more inclusive approaches. They're willing to pay for a unique experience, but not if they're not if you milk them dry. Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's why we're launching Utopia. It's because we're that bridge between the premium and the freemium. In fact, we create digital stadiums where you can keep commercials and brands outside. You can keep them in a live event. You have a digital stadium where the commercials live and fans activate brands. So you keep the real experience, fan experience, pure.
No, I love that. Last couple question. Go ahead. No, Diederik, please go ahead.
I just wanted to add a little bit. Like I said, we're not a nonprofit. We want to make money, of course, at Utopia. But for me, the social part is also very important. And also what makes it a success for me is that we want to make sports accessible to all. And we already see that we're able to get fans to stadiums who've never been before and haven't been able to buy. We see, for instance, kids playing games, buying tickets, and then register it for them and their dad. So the kids bringing the dad to the game. We see people exploring different sports because they, for instance, they're a fan of a specific soccer team and they say, oh, there's also a basketball team local I see now, and I get a ticket there. So they explore different things as well. And I think for both of us, that social part is, we've been both lucky enough to enjoy sports at high levels and then see a lot of things. Not everyone is as fortunate. So for me, in 5 years, I want people to look back and say, okay, this is what made me a fan. This is what made me go to enjoy sports and whatever, or made it possible for me and my family to enjoy live sports. I think.
Boy, imagine if a world, like, I've got a 2-year-old grandson now, and he's growing up here in LA, and I'm thinking, like, imagine him having a story like my 7-year-old me story, right? Which was going to Wrigley Field with my sister, blah, blah, blah. But imagine his story being like, I fell in love with this team or this club or this sport because of this part of the digital fan experience, right? And then that enabled me to go with my grandpa or with my dad to some games or some matches. And his story is the modern version of that story, right? So it doesn't have to be this. Yeah, it doesn't have to be this nostalgic, like everybody has to experience sport for the first time, like the three of us did, right? As respectfully middle-aged white guys, right? Like it doesn't have to be that. It can be this other version of that going forward. And yes, Diederik, I did just suck you into my age bracket right there. So sorry about that. All right, so one last kind of businessy question before we get to our closing segment, because this one's kind of been hanging over me the whole time we've been talking. So we've talked club, we've talked league, we've talked media company engagement and relevance. What about the players? Like the players themselves? Like, is there the player is the brand nowadays, right? Like, so is there an opportunity, or is there a space in this Venn diagram of YouTopia that connects directly to the players and helps the players connect directly to the fans, or vice versa? Or am I just making that up?
No, you're nailing it. It's one of our pillars. And I'll ask first, what is NIL? What is NIL? NIL, the real NIL, is ambassadorship. It's saying, hey, I'm so-and-so athlete, and look at the brands that I use, in order to achieve this high performance. That's the real essence of NIL. Now, it's been diluted to the point where it's not so much ambassadors, it's more influencers, right?
Yeah, hey, and if we're really honest, Seb, and you know this because you played ball in the U.S., like basically NIL is just legalized the old bag full of cash that you got from the booster to come to their school.
Yeah. But what if we change it a little bit and we return to the essence of it, so that our goal is that every university has its digital stadium inside our ecosystem. Okay. And in that inside their virtual stadium, well, that's where the stars of the sports team of that university will have interviews, will show workouts, and fans need to trade in their Ucoins in order to access that content. So in fact, it gives these athletes at the universities their own, again, just like NWSL or Love B, they give them their own global platform to not have to go through, the social media, mega giants, the ESPNs, all these big, they can actually monetize their image, their fans, and keep the data 100% in their platform, on their platform. Awesome. And that's the future of real ownership is, do I own and engage with my community? And what brands want is they want to know who that community is. And that's where the data comes in.
And these athletic departments at the top 200 or 300 universities in any sport in the US, at least, where collegiate sports is essentially semi-professional sports now. These athletic departments are all trying to figure out ways to create additional revenue, right? And they're trying to figure out ways to stay engaged to the fan that maybe they've priced out of their stadium, or to fill seats for the secondary sports that aren't men's basketball or men's football, right? So women's basketball, women's volleyball, golf, soccer, like softball, all the other sports that populate a university athletic department's budget that aren't quote unquote revenue generators. They're all seeking this way to connect.
Absolutely. And you have to look at NCAA sports as the future pro league of sports industry.
100%.
I mean, what teams can today tap in tomorrow with YouTopia into alumni base? I mean, some of these schools have thousands and thousands and thousands of alumni. How many schools can tap in tomorrow? Alumni, students, fans, locals. I mean, around Duke basketball, they have fans all over the world, right? How do you?
Hey, I went to Arizona State, and one of the phrases that gets used about Arizona State University always is like sleeping giant, right? Like 500,000 alumni around the world, and yet they have never done like an adequate job of tapping into that as a revenue source to be able to grow the competition levels on the field or the pitch, so to speak. So,
there you go.
Yeah, no, it's a huge. By the way, I love, Diederik, you can answer my actual question. I love that Seb snuck in the whole university part of the business model in response to my question about the athletes. But talk to me about is there a place in the Venn diagram, Diederik, for like LeBron or Steph Curry or Trinity Rodman in the NWSL at Washington Spirit? Like, is there a way that you service and help the athletes as well? Or are we working towards the athletes through the clubs?
Oh, I think Seb already mentioned it. It's an athlete is also a rights holder, right? In NIL, they just sell their rights to the university, I guess.
Yeah.
But they also own rights on specific content from themselves and so on. So they can have their own stadium, the LeBron Stadium or whatever, where they bring their own partners, which they all have plenty, and they monetize their content. Or what we see works is not just ticketing merchandise, but it's experiences, right? It's things that often don't cost anything for a rights holder or a player, a meet and greet, or sit in the tunnel when the players walk out or whatever. Those experiences are really meaningful to younger generations, but even older generations, and they don't cost anything. And that can be in there from a player's point of view, from whatever rights holder. So players are rights holders in my mind as well.
I love that. That's fascinating. There's so much potential here. I was curious coming into this conversation, and now I'm curious and super excited because what you guys are doing is, and Seb knows this. He knows enough of me to know that when I get excited about something, whether it's boys high school basketball or this is awesome to hear. All right.
I just heard you can introduce this to Arizona State, so.
Well, trust me, I've got some other ideas off air that I'll share with you. We won't shout some people out here on the pod, but we'll talk afterwards. All right, so last question, because I want to get you guys out of here. Diederik, thank you for giving us your evening at home, away from the family. Seb,
you're welcome.
I pulled you off Lake Michigan for the afternoon, probably. So thank you for that. But this is more just kind of a general entrepreneurial question, right? You guys you're entrepreneurs. You're entrepreneurial thinkers about the industry of sport, in the sense that you're thinking about it differently, right? And you're painting a picture of what the industry of sport, multifaceted, multiple profiles of users and consumers, is going to be. And that's why I think you guys are entrepreneurial thinkers. That's why I wanted to have you on. But at the core, you're entrepreneurs. Like, you're making a bet on yourselves. You're pitching your story to outside investors. You're bringing in partners, and you're trying to build something, as you said, that's only 4 or 5 months old. So speaking to just the entrepreneurs in the audience, or the aspiring entrepreneurs, you guys essentially attacked how you could do something better inside of something that you both were really passionate about, right? Like, you have a deep-seated love for sport and for the accessibility of sport. not everybody's entrepreneurial problem that they're going to solve is going to be the thing that is deeply attached to them. But history has proven to me, of the tens of thousands of entrepreneurs that I've mentored in the last 20 years, that's often the starting point, right? It's like, I'm going to reinvent something that I'm really passionate about. It doesn't always make the best business, but sometimes it does. So if the two of you, maybe you can each take one, could you give us like 2 key lessons, just like basic lessons for that aspiring entrepreneur out there who's really passionate about something that they see inside of something that they're deeply passionate about? Like, what are 1 or 2 in this case, since there's 2 of you, like key things that young woman or man has to do or has to think about if they're going to try and take on changing the way that something works? And maybe Seb, go first, Mr. Visionary.
Well, first of all, there's a difference between entrepreneurship in innovation and entrepreneurship. Innovation is when you are proposing something different. Okay. Entrepreneurship without innovation can, in my humble opinion, it's just rewrapping the present, the box, and presenting it a different way. Right?
I love that.
That's hard. It takes resilience and it takes humility, right? Innovation is entrepreneurship that deals with innovation. It's a completely different approach.
Yeah.
Without passion and without having really lived, I'll go back to Diederik ordering VHS tapes.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't work if you don't have passion and, most of all, credibility in the industry that you're trying to innovate. It doesn't work.
100%
Have the
true.
humility to say, look, I played dad soccer in Carmel, Indiana. I played high school basketball. I played the junior national team. I was a general manager. I already sold a previous sports tech company. Like, entrepreneurship and innovation, it's not overnight. It's a long road to refine. It's like a funnel, to refine your knowledge in that industry. Yeah. And my advice is be certain whether you are an entrepreneur or you are an entrepreneur in innovation, because if it's innovation, you better be damn sure you have a lot of, passion and a story and experience in that industry that you're innovating.
I love that. That's super insightful. Diederik, what do you think? What are 1 or 2 keys for you to this entrepreneurial journey?
For me, it's pretty simple. Know what your strengths are. It's the same like back in the day with basketball. Know what you can do, but especially understand and get to know what you can't do, and find someone else who can do it to team up with.
Love that. 100%, right? I mean, it is the oldest lesson of time, right? Know your strengths and weaknesses, and then find a good teammate.
And that takes humility. That takes humility too. It comes back to humility of really understanding, that, you can have a great idea. If you can't execute it, it's worth nothing.
Love it. 100%. Guys, this was incredible. I feel like we're going to have a fascinating off-air conversation in about 2 minutes when we're done here, but I'm super grateful for your time. Seb, I love you, buddy. This is what a great moment to be able to bring this relationship full circle in this way. And I feel like we're maybe only getting started. Maybe there's a new chapter here for us, right? So we'll see. But no, super. Hey, and Diederik, a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What I didn't say is one of my best friends in life is actually named Dietrich, and spelled almost exactly the same as you, except with a T. So I was excited about that. I haven't seen him in a few years, but I'm super proud of what you guys are doing. I'm very excited. I did not know the length of time that you'd been working on it, other than just following you guys online and seeing how it's been progressing. So I'm super excited to see that you are making as much progress as you are making already so early in the journey. And yet I think as you did conversationally today, you uncovered so many opportunities. And I know that there will be listeners of our show who are adjacent to what you're doing, who are in other spaces that'll be fascinated by it, both from an entrepreneurial standpoint as well as an investor and a consumer standpoint. So I'm eager to help you or become part of our community. We refer to you guys, when you leave our show, we don't refer to you as guests anymore. We refer to you as alumni, because you truly do become alumni of this community of other entrepreneurial thinkers that are cutting across every sector and segment of society and industry, with, as we said in the very beginning, try to leave the world, or in this case, the world of sport, a little bit better than we found it. And so I'm really, really grateful for you. Before we go, real quick, and Diederik, maybe you can give us the details. What's the website? What's the social media? Like, where can we find or follow each of you and the company?
The website's YouTopia, YOU, Topia. What's the word in English?
Hyphen.
Oh, like the M, hyphen or M dash. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And sports.com. Social media, I got no clue. I have no social media.
So I usually say, like, people can find you or not find you if you don't want them to. So
we have Instagram. I think we have a team that tries to keep up with that. And of course, you can find us on LinkedIn. Same, YouTopia Sports.
Awesome.
Pretty easily. But my advice would just download the app. Look at it. It's mainly Western European teams for now. But if you look at it, then you'll
more
like
to come
it,
soon.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. This is terrific.
Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
And as always, we thank you so much for listening and watching. Today's show is produced by our team at the Storytellers Company in Mexico City and Los Angeles. And you can always find, like, follow, subscribe, and share our show as found on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you find your favorite podcast by searching Entrepreneurial Thinkers with Rob Ryan. You can also follow along on our various social media platforms for clips and contents at Entrepreneurial Thinkers. And if you'd like to connect with me, our host, you can find me just about anywhere on social under the handle I am Rob Ryan. Thanks, and have a great day.